Have you ever did a project and it went so well that you were receiving all these compliments and everybody was happy, but there was that one person that said something that just ruined the whole experience for you? Well, that's what is called a negative bias. In this video, we're going to be talking about what a negative bias is, how it can keep you from really achieving your goals and being who you want to be, and also why it's not as bad as we think that it sounds. Negative bias is something that has been identified by neuroscience as a protective mechanism to keep you alive. So if you've ever gone to, like, walk in a shelf, or you walked on next to a cliff or something like that, and you have that thought that, okay, I can fall over, or I can, something can happen to me. You have a knife and you have to be careful, or scissors, or these kind of things that you have to be careful. That is that negative bias kicking in. It's designed to keep you alive. You're thinking about the negative outcome of something that could possibly happen, and it keeps you from doing something that can potentially cause you injury. Now, where it does not serve you is that when you are doing something that you want to do, but you're having these negative thoughts that are preventing you from really going about that thing. So you want that promotion, and in order for you to get the promotion, you have to do these presentations. Well, you're fearful of the presentations, and you're thinking about, somebody saying something, or you're not doing it to the best that you think that you should be doing, and you're having all these negative thoughts, and they're causing you to be frozen or to be stuck and not really reaching for what you need, what you want, or the goal that you want to achieve. That's negative bias. Now, ways to get around that would be to realizing that, yes, these are potentially things that can happen, and yes, these might be outcomes that do happen, but it doesn't mean that you still will not be learned from the situation, and you can't move past those situations. We're in a society today where, we see a lot of things on social media where, everybody puts forth that perfect view. So you're seeing the perfect picture, you're seeing the perfect video, and you're not realizing that behind all of that, there's failures, people get photoshopped into some of these images, and they're just showing you the perfect outcome. And that in of itself, I think, causes a lot of people to go into that negative frame. They don't really think that, okay, yeah, I can fail. It's okay if I fail, and I can learn from my failure. Now, if you remember when you were younger, there are things that happened to you, but you didn't have that negative bias around it. I.e., if you're learning to ride a bike, or if you were learning to walk, you went to school for the first time, you're learning math, you're learning English, you're learning history, these kind of things. You probably had setbacks, which is what we would call them, but you did not allow them to be the overriding thought that you had all the time around this thing, to the point where you no longer wanted to try to succeed. You wanted to try to achieve your goal. And like, you're learning to ride a bike, you fell off the bike, and you say, I fell down, but you didn't say, okay, well, that's it for me on the bike, and we put it up and never did it again. Or if you were taking, like math, for me, that's a it's a touchy subject. You don't just say, okay, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. It's something that you need, and because you need it, you persevere. Well, it's the same thing today. Negative bias is there, yes, honestly, to keep you alive from some of these things that can be harmful for you, but it's not meant to hold you in place. Now, there's some things that happen that kind of makes the negative bias that is natural worse. And one of those things is rumination, right? Where you're having that negative thought over and over and over and over again. And what that does is just deepens the impression in your mind. The more you have a thought, the stronger the neurons, that's the thing that is created in your mind when you're thinking about your habits and these kind of things. The stronger that neuron is, the harder it is for you to override it, to overcome it. And the interesting part about the brain is that once you create that neuron for that thought, you cannot remove it. The only thing for you to do now is to have a stronger impression than the one that you've already created. And this is where now some of these solutions that I'm going to give to get past what is happening, or get past the thoughts that you're having. One of those things is to reframe with evidence. So you can reframe, this positive thinking, and it doesn't work, but it does. But you can make it even stronger if you have something with evidence. So say with the promotion or the presentation that you need to give, one of the biggest fears, they say, for a lot of people, is public speaking, right? Because you're getting in front of people, and There are all these things that can happen. Well, one of the things that you can do is to say, okay, well, where have I had a challenge, or where have I had something that I have had to do before, which I've never done before, and I was able to get through it, right? I.e. riding the bike. Before you knew how to ride those pedals, there was a period in your life where you've never been on a bike. There's a period of your life that you didn't know what the feeling was, but you decided to persevere. So you can go back to a time in your life where there's something that you needed to do, something that you wanted to do, and you were able to learn it. You were able to fail at it, but still learn and still persevere, and then use that now for the thing that you're afraid of, or you're having the negative thoughts around, and let that fuel past, or let that override the negative thoughts that you're having. The next thing you can do is to have good internal self-talk, right? And that is super, super important, because a lot of the negative bias that is made stronger is because we're having that continuous negative self-talk on the inside. You know, you're a failure, or you can't do this, who are you to try? You know, all these things that come up in your mind. And I've been there, where you know there's something that you want to do, but the negative self-talk, that either it's coming from other people that you've heard or been told to you, or something you've created yourself, they just keep coming up in your head, and you can override that, right? You can speak affirmations to yourself where you're practicing or focusing on something that is positive, right? And you're intentional about keeping that in your mental, which is very, very important. And when you slip back into, because you will, and because you've made that thing, that negative thing, a habit, you reframe and you refocus and you move forward, right? One of the things that I remember, I had a algebra test when I was going back to school, and math is not my thing. And I remember I failed the test, and I tried for that test. I really tried for that test, and I failed it really stupendously. And I remember I was driving home, and then the negative talks were they was coming up. It was blaring big time, and I had to make a conscious effort, a conscious thought, have those conscious thoughts to override what was already happening, right? Because it was, you know, the old habit was coming back, but I did some work. I did some self-development to say, okay, to recognize, one, that it was happening, right? I didn't go back into that spiral where I just let the automatic pilot go, and it was just taking me places I didn't want to go. I recognized it was happening, and I stopped. Sometimes you have to confront those thoughts. And one of the things you can do is to ask the question, is this true? Right? So the negative thoughts that are happening, like, oh, you're a failure. Is that true? No, it's not true. I failed a test. I am not a failure. And that's important. Right? Because we tend to associate our identities with some of these negative things that are happening, and it doesn't have to be that way. You can fall down off the bike, and it doesn't mean that you are a failure at riding a bike. You just fell down. And it's the same thing with a lot of other things that we're doing. It doesn't mean that you are a failure. You have failed at the instance of the thing that you're trying, but it doesn't mean, by any way, shape, of the imagination, mean that you're a failure. Thomas Edison. Oh, I'm getting for one. The guy who invented the light bulbs, he said that he had not failed, but he has found 10,000 ways of how not to make the light bulb. And that is important because he did not associate his identity with what was happening with the light bulb. All he chalked it up to was that route or that road didn't lead anywhere. Doesn't mean that none of the other roads that I'm going to try won't lead someplace. And eventually he discovered the light bulb. He discovered the filament that was necessary for the light to stay on without it burning out. And the same thing with what we're doing. The self-talk needs to be of a uplifting kind. It needs to be of a positive kind in order for you to move forward, because we're going to have setbacks. You're going to have challenges, right? You're going to have negative people around you, and you need to be able to encourage yourself so that the environment does not dictate your inside. Outside, externally is one thing, but you being calm on the inside is very, very important. The other thing you can do is to practice gratitude. Gratitude has been proven, scientifically has been proven everywhere around the globe to be very, very important for your well-being, and I'm talking about your mental well-being. Knowing what you're thankful for, being aware of the things that you're thankful for is very important, because we can't just passively go through life and then just think or wish that life is going to be good. There are days that's going to be bad, and how do you get yourself out of these things is to practice gratitude. Be thankful for something, even though when you have things that are not going the way that you want. You can literally have a broken foot and be thankful that you still have the foot. These kind of things, but it depends on what you choose to be focused, what you choose to focus on. It is super, super important. You can write them down, which I would recommend, because there are going to be days when you don't feel like practicing or writing down the things that you're grateful for, but you can turn those pages back to where you have had these wins and how much you appreciate them. Because when you have the good days, keep them stored up so that when you have the bad days, you can pull them out and use them. And lastly, which I think is one of the most important things you can do, is to have a community around you that is supportive, right? No man is an island, and we cannot get through this world by ourselves. Now, it's interestingly enough, it can go good and it can go bad, where you have people around you that are positive, that will lift you up, but you can also have people around you that are not that positive. And because of that, this contributes to the negative bias, right? So you need to be careful about the weeds in your garden. You need to be careful about who you're planting around you, so that they're not having a negative impact on you, right? We are, quote unquote, in a more connected society, but honestly, because of the technology and some of these things, people are being more alone than we realize. And having actual people around you that you speak to, that encourage you, that you encourage, does have a boost on your mental well-being. And it has a way to balance out, because again, you cannot get rid of the negative bias. It is a part of you. It's part of your default software. But what you can do is to make sure there's a balance, right? And if possible, make sure that you're more positive than you are negative, so that when the tank does come down, it's coming down to a even level, instead of you dropping down. And this is where people get into depression and anxiety and these kind of things, because they're below where they should be, right? And practicing some of those things that I talked about will help you to maintain a good mental outlook, right? Like I said before, you're going to have bad days. It's not going to be up all the time. But if you're practicing things that will help you foster a positive outlook on life, when you do have your challenges, when you do have your bad days, as bad as they are, and they will come, it'll help you to persevere, right? So you don't spiral into a situation where now you have to get mental help, and somebody has to come now and talk you out of the deep pit that you're in, right? So another thing you can do, and I challenge everybody who's watching this video, is practice 7 days of being mindful or having that positive mental shift, being grateful about things that are happening in your life, right? And it doesn't have to be anything super big. You can just be happy for the fact that you have food, you have shelter, you have clothing, you have family, these kind of things, because there are people, honestly, who some of these things that we take for granted do not have them at all. And when you're able to, practice it, and like I say, if you do it for 7 days, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for a positive outlook for life. Now, like I said before, the negative bias is default software for each and every one of us. It is designed to keep you more or less alive, so that you don't go into situations, do things, like driving the opposite side of traffic, or any of these things that are negative and could have a negative impact on your life and a lot of other people. But it is what we need to be careful of. What we need to be mindful of is when we allow it now to be too much more, or much more than it needs to be. Right? We all can do more than we think. We all should do more than we think. And that requires us being intentful about our outlook on life and how we think about even ourselves. Because if you allow these negative self-talk to continue to roll, and that tape to just, rewind and play, you're not going to be optimal. You won't be able to achieve some of these goals that you want to achieve, and life is just not going to be pleasant. So I want you to focus on what is positive. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, "As a man thinketh, so is he," and that is important, because what you think about, what you focus on, you magnify. So let's magnify the good. Let's keep a positive outlook, and let's keep it moving forward. Who you want to be and who you can be all depends on what you think about.